Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's episode of Kibbitzing with Kagan. This week's very special guest is Nannette Hobson. She's the CEO of Montgomery Community Media. And first off, I have to say that I'm wearing a t-shirt because it's the only orange thing that I have in my wardrobe. So orange and black are their colors. They have recently had their grand reopening, and there's so much to discuss. So Nannette, thank you so much for being my special guest this week.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about Montgomery Community Media.
Woohoo! All right, so before we get to MCM, let's learn a little bit more about you, because even though you've been here for 8 years and over 4 years as CEO, there are a lot of folks who may not have known you. So talk about your childhood first, where you grew up, and then you went to Hampton University in Virginia.
Sure did. Yeah.
Go ahead. So talk about that.
So I'm a native Frederictonian. I grew up in Frederick, Maryland.
Nice.
I went to Hampton. It was Hampton Institute when I went. Hampton University now, one of the main HBCUs in the country, one of the top HBCUs. I graduated from Hampton. I started my career in Norfolk, Virginia, went to Baltimore. I worked at WJZ TV when Oprah Winfrey was there doing the news. I know. This is my brush. I have these brief brushes with fame throughout my career. And I left there. I got married and left there and went to Channel 4 in Washington, D.C. and worked for NBC for many, many years. And worked my way up from weekend writer to assistant news director. And in fact, I was actually running the newsroom on 9/11. My boss had.
Okay, so hold on, pause. I got to rewind the clock by a lot. First off, as you indicated, Hampton, now University, is an HBCU. Yes. Tell me how that was important for you and how that framed your career, your education.
So I was very grateful to go to an HBCU.
And I should have defined it. Not everybody knows that acronym.
Oh, sure.
It's a historically Black college and university. And that we have in Maryland, we have 3. We have Morgan State, we have Bowie State University, and we have the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. But there are other top-notch schools for people who, for some reason, feel like they have to leave Maryland and get educated elsewhere. Right. Our wonderful Ms. Hobson. So go ahead.
So my husband is a Bowie alum, by the way.
There you
go. And I went to Virginia, not too far.
Yeah.
4-hour drive to Virginia to pursue an HBCU, largely because my 2 older siblings stayed in Maryland and went to college, and I thought that they were a little too close to home, so I went a little further. It was also my mother's alma mater.
Nice.
So it was a wonderful time to be getting into media. Yes. Especially as a African American woman. It was a time in the we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s here, when live television, live local news was really emerging. That's when I got into business.
So talk about. So you majored in communications.
I did. And I actually, my degree is actually in mass media arts, and there's no such degree anymore.
Okay.
But it meant that they taught us everything. Yeah. Radio, television, print, all of it. It was wonderful.
And you have been, you've been in media for about 25 years now, and you were starting to talk about live media, but certainly 24-hour media, certainly social media. So we're going to talk about all of that. So why don't you start by with giving us the brief overview of some of the changes you've seen over about 25 years so far.
Yeah, well, I wish it was just 25 years. None of my children are that young, okay? I've actually been in this business 40 years. I've seen it all. So my very first job in TV, we were shooting film, literally film. Took 3-4 hours to develop the film. Film at 11 was a real phrase. It meant that the news is happening now, but you cannot see it until 4 hours from now, 11 o'clock, because that's as soon as we could get it on TV. I left Norfolk and went to Baltimore, where there were live trucks and Oprah Winfrey and a guy named Richard Scher, and news was instant. So that happened for me overnight, moving from one market to the other, coming home. And it was revelatory, even though the tape, was on cassettes and was 3/4 of an inch thick, and the cameras were huge and heavy and all these things. But it was the beginning, the baby of where we are now, which obviously you could do an entire broadcast using a cell phone.
Yes.
And the folks that you
or Zoom like this.
Zoom like this, or any you can everybody can broadcast, right?
Yes.
It used to take this huge, and back in the day they were $500,000 trucks. Yes. That had to ride around town that weighed 12 tons to something that you carry in your pocket now. But more important than the technology for me is how the importance of local news has changed for communities.
We are totally going to get into all that, but I want to give a little bit more of your background first.
Oh, sure.
So you were in the media market, the DC media market, as you indicated, with WRC, NBC. Talk about the challenges and opportunities of being in the DC media market, because you left and then came back.
I have to say that I felt very fortunate to be a woman in the newsroom in the 80s. I think that's about the time when women were beginning to push hard against the glass ceilings. I was a producer of a major newscast in a major market, a Black woman. There weren't many of us in the country doing that, probably. You could probably count us all on your hands. Wow. And I may have known them all too, because we were a small cluster of folks with that great opportunity. And a lot of those women from that time have pushed forth to lead national news organizations, which makes me so incredibly proud. But it was challenging. It was exciting. It was thrilling. We were not only helping to bring forth local news, but we were also beginning to bring our own identities and sensitivities. Yes. To newsroom meetings and newsroom culture. Yes. And the actual product that people got to see, which is what I love about local news, because it's supposed to be reflective. Right. So even though I have to say, we largely white men led newsrooms and television stations largely. Sure. I've been fortunate. I have worked for a female news director. I have worked for an African-American male news director in my time. And then I became a news director, which was, pretty amazing. But there was a lot of change in the perspective of what local news is and how reflective of the community it should be during my 40 years. And I'm happy to have witnessed that. Yes.
So 40 years is a long time. Why don't you tell us, so first off, I think I'd be irresponsible if I didn't ask whether you're still in touch with Oprah Winfrey, and do you have a favorite Oprah story that you'd like to share here before we move on?
So I am not. I think I am not. I can honestly say that. The last time I saw her in person was when she left WJZ TV, where we had worked together. Yes. And I had moved on to WRC. So I came back from Washington to attend her going away party in Fells Point. Nice. And it's the last time I saw her in person.
Is there a quick story about
I think my favorite Oprah stories are the ones where I just describe how incredibly fun and warm and friendly she was to be with and to work with. Nice. It was a long time ago. We were kids, we were young, we were pretty young. And she, even then though, she had a powerful presence, and Oprah would call you and say, come over, let's have, she was very generous too. I remember that about her. Lovely. But she loved to laugh. She loved to bring people together. She was always on a diet. She loved, so when I worked at WJZ, Oprah and this guy named Richard Scher, whom I am still in touch with, did a talk show every day called People Are Talking at 10 a.m., a live studio audience talk show. Right. And then they would come down the hall and do the noon show. And and Oprah and Richard would like hang out with their audience for another whole hour, just having a good time, being with their community. They were genuine, and she is genuine.
That's fantastic. So before we go to MCM, which obviously is what I mostly want to talk about, tell me who some of your, other than Oprah, who some of your women role models have been over the either one or two sheroes of yours.
Oh my God. If you're an old time Washingtonian like me, you may remember Angela Owens, who was one of the very first African-American female reporters in Washington DC. And when I was coming through high school, first of all, my family was they were huge news watchers. My parents were very big on us being—
That's important. Yeah.
Right, involved in not only watching the news, but discussing it and all that.
Love it.
But Angela and Jim Vance were heroes and role models for me. Yes. So years later, not too terribly many years later, I actually landed in a newsroom where I got to know them both, and I worked closely with them both, and it was just a stunning opportunity, and so I definitely would list them as being
okay. So that's good. That's amazing. And I love Jim Vance. I kind of feel like I grew up with him.
Yeah.
And when well, anyway, I want to talk about MCM. So Montgomery Community Media, also my MCM. I mean, there's an ownership here that I think a lot of us feel. Why don't you start by talking about the history of MCM and kind of what you believe its top priority goals are, how it serves the community?
So MCM is over 30 years old, and it was initially formed as a nonprofit organization designed to be the caretakers of the access media channels for Montgomery County. So when cable companies come to a region, they make an agreement. They have a contract with the local government to use their, the public byways to run that cable. And in exchange, the cables give, in exchange for many things, including money. But another thing that they give is a piece of the cable real estate back to the people, to the government. Mm-hmm. In Montgomery County, there are 11 channels on the cable spectrum that belong to the county. They belong to the city of Rockville, the city of Gaithersburg. There's one for, Tacoma Park. There's one for all the other municipalities. Yes. And then, of course, the county government has several. The school systems have several. Yes. But 3 of those channels are designated for public use.
Why don't you say what the channel numbers are?
The channels are channels 19, 21, and channel 995, which is the HD channel. Okay. Channel 995 is actually a simulcast of channel 21. Okay. You can find us on the HD spectrum at 995. Okay. So MCM was designed to be the administrator of those channels, to make sure that they were up and running and that they're programmed. Mm-hmm. Along with that mission, though, initially also came the charge of providing the public the opportunity to create content, to go on those channels. Yes. And that meant studios and cameras and things. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, 30 years ago, as you know, studios and cameras were out of reach for the general public. Yes. You needed that investment to create those facilities so people could learn to make their own TV shows. Mm-hmm. And that's where sort of the idea of the Wayne's World kind of TV came from, was that, the MCM was providing folks with this chance to do TV shows about anything.
So I was on 21 this week, on and off for years, actually, yes. Which is a great little kind of the local McLaughlin group for folks who may remember that, which was an in the round talk show with Democrats and Republicans and a moderator, and it was a great deal of fun, actually. And we still do 21 this week. Casey does, and it's, to me, it is a great representation of civil discourse on a weekly basis. Yes, that is highly local. And and as you point out, it's just difficult to find that kind of content anywhere else anymore.
So that's what we do. And our overall mission has evolved with the times in not only providing those kinds of programs now, but also providing the kind of media equipment and philosophy and platforms that the public needs and wants, because it's changed so much.
Absolutely. So I'm an average Montgomery County resident, and I want to, you tell me, record a podcast. My band wants to record a video and put it on their YouTube channel. Talk about what sort of options there are for people to use these. They're beautiful studios.
Yes.
Large and small, and yeah.
Yes. So you can do any kind of media you want to create. We want to help you create, yes. And we have the means to help you create it. So if you're a band and you want a real live studio with HD cameras and professional sound, we have one of the, if not the largest studio in Montgomery County right here. You would have to get certified to use that equipment by taking some courses that are very reasonably priced. But once you take those courses and you pass our certification, you could book the studio for very little money and come in here with some of your friends on a weekend or a weeknight and record your music video.
Awesome.
If you're so inclined and you'd like to do a podcast on a regular basis, we can teach you how to do that and provide a lovely, beautiful little podcast studio in 2 locations, by the way, here and in our Silver Spring facility. And again,
to be clear, since this is on Zoom, you're in Rockville, just off of Goody Drive. That's correct. Headquarters. Yeah.
And we're also in Silver Spring on 2nd Avenue, walking distance from the Metro.
Great.
So we'll teach you how to use our sound equipment to make your podcast, but we'll also happy to teach you how to be a producer and a storyteller in terms of media. We have courses that help people to organize their thoughts and their product, when it comes to their content. We will collaborate with you and help you to bring your idea to fruition in the best, most professional way possible. Go ahead.
So that's all what the public can use, but MCM also does its own programming, and especially let's talk about, this is an election year, and there's also local sports and local news. Why don't you talk about what MCM does and how you decide what to cover?
So part of our evolution from 30 years ago was also understanding that while we were dedicated to the people need these channels to reflect their communities and the stories that need to be told, stories that are important to the community. It's become more and more important with local news resources diminishing across the board. So I used to work at Channel 4 and produce the 6 o'clock news. I picked a lead story for the region based on how important it was.
Yes.
It didn't matter if the story was about a bill that passed in Maryland, if it was the most important story. My assumption was that everybody in Virginia would care and everybody in DC would care because I deemed the story the most important.
Yes.
It's much harder now for news organizations like Channel 4, 9, 7 to maintain audiences in this homogenized region. They have to be more equitable about the news that they share, and they're trying to keep you watching.
Yes.
And so it becomes a little bit more difficult to find your hyper local news that's just important to you. So MCM seeks to fulfill that.
Yes.
By covering stories in Montgomery County, about Montgomery County, just for Montgomery County. And one of those things that's most important right now is the upcoming election.
Yes.
So we are covering it. We just recently did a political discussion explaining how important this election is.
Former council member Valerie Irvin was on it, and Chris Gordon.
Old buddy and colleague.
Nice.
And we will continue to cover this election, including candidate statements, which will be available on our platforms for voters to see before they make their choices. And we hope to have some candidate forums before the July election day. So I get it that there'll be coverage throughout the region and other platforms, but we want to be comprehensive.
I love
We
it.
want to be everything that voters need.
So talk about social media for MCM. Who does that? If I'm the reporter and I create the story, am I responsible then for tweeting and posting and sharing? And how does all that work?
So everyone at MCM is responsible for those things. As you know, social media and being part of a nonprofit organization, we all need to network and share in order to get the good news out about our mission.
Right.
So all of our reporters do all of those things. They post, they storytell, they share. We do have a person on staff whose sole job it is to help us coordinate social media and strategize our messaging. We have a marketing person as well. These are young people for whom social media is second nature, and that the language and the culture of social media is easy for them to navigate. Maybe easier than for a person like me who uses it, but I'm not sure I can capitalize on it as well as a person for whom generationally it's always been a part of their lives.
Absolutely. So talk about how MCM gets its support, its financial support. Roughly, how much comes from government? How much from corporate sponsors and from individuals paying for some of the fees that you mentioned?
So we do largely get our money from the government, but probably not in ways that people think. So we're not government employees. We are a nonprofit.
Right.
The government literally, and I'm talking about the county government, literally pays us to maintain those cable channels. There's real work in that. Mm-hmm. There's a facility, it has to be managed, and they pay us to do that. And they provide us the equipment for us to do that. Additionally, 30 years ago, when MCM was formed, another thing that the county wanted from this nonprofit was to provide them with media professionals to help the county create its own media that's separate from us. We still provide those employees to the county. Yes. So we're a contractor, if you will. So the people who are behind bringing you that live council hearing, or county executive news conference or whatever, are MCM employees. The county contracts those people from us, and then directs them to do whatever it is that they do. So between that services contract and the allocation for running the channels, we actually do get the majority of our funding from the county. Okay. We also get grants from the Arts and Humanities Council of Montgomery County. Yes. We get grants from anyone who's gracious enough to bestow them on us, usually to create content for specific community needs. Nice.
I love that. How would someone pitch a story? I'm doing a thing in Gaithersburg. I think you guys ought to cover it. How would someone figure out whom to contact and how far in advance?
So you should definitely go to our website at mymcmedia.org. You can pitch a story there quite easily. I also encourage folks to reach out to us on social media, where we're very active: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also YouTube if you want to. Right. You can always find us there. You can always find a response there. I think that's pretty easy. It's you can email us through our website. You can contact us directly through our website. And yes, you can pitch to anyone. You can call us even if there's something urgent. That's great. How much time do you need? It depends on what you're looking for, but for an event or something that's well planned, I would give us as much notice as possible. We also can help you figure out ways to get the video that you shoot, into our platforms. And so there's lots and lots of ways for us to collaborate around coverage. We love contributed content. This is part of what we do. So, our goal is to get you to bring your neighborhood, your community news to us so that we can share it with everyone.
That's huge. And I bet most people would never think about that. I love it.
Well, you'd be surprised. I'm grateful that, folks do. And in fact, our channels, Channel 19 is really all about communities sharing programming, communities, churches, organizations,
Yes.
clubs, individuals, just, sharing their content with everyone.
So one of the things that's fun is when you're channel surfing and you see last year's Tacoma Park Folk Festival or something.
Right.
And yeah, you guys are great about that. So I want to pivot and hit our fast five shortly, but two things. Is there anything about MCM that we haven't discussed that you want to share?
Well, I would love to share with folks that if they go to our website and they enjoy our coverage, they go to our YouTube page, that you can donate to us. You can become a subscriber.
Good.
We would love to have more subscribers to our YouTube page in particular. But video is our currency. We post every day. There's fresh content every day. So please, if you don't already, subscribe to our newsletter, subscribe to our Facebook, our YouTube pages, and consume this local news because it's important.
That's fantastic. So before we pivot, you referenced that you were working on 9/11 on September 11th, 2001. And those of us who are old enough to remember it, obviously all have that day seared in our memories, but young people don't know so much about it. So why don't you share a brief story about the most powerful memory or incident of that day?
Oh, that's hard.
I know it is. Sorry.
I think my most powerful memory of that day was the amount of great responsibility I felt for the newsroom, for the staff in general. Because my boss wasn't there and he couldn't get home. He was in Europe. So I just felt so, every day in a newsroom that size, you make assignments, you send people here, you send them there. I don't know that the world was as dangerous then as it is now, but I remember Megan McGrath in particular going to the Pentagon when we heard and the thought in the moment of all the people who were on the streets covering this impactful story for the newsroom and being truly concerned for them.
Yes.
In addition to,
in terms of mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of physical, mental, everything. When you think about those first hours, we really just didn't know what was happening. Yeah. And when we realized that that DC itself was being attacked too, then it was very difficult. And as a person who was charged with some level of authority over where people went, what they did, it was an enormous burden to carry, I guess, responsibility.
Yeah.
And then I think about, you're also worried about everybody you love, right? So it was a lot. It was a lot.
You were covering history, one of the most horrifying, tragic incidents in American history, in world history.
In world history.
So let us pivot to something much more fun, which is Fast Five. Nannette Hobson, CEO of Montgomery Community Media. 5 quick questions, quick answers for people to get to know you better. So first off, so let's take 9/11 off of this list, but what was the most exciting story you've ever covered?
Oh my God, there've been I don't know. This will surprise you, but I was at opening day at Camden Yards in Baltimore. I wasn't working for WRC at the time, but the day that ballpark opened, I was there, and that was really exciting. It was a wonderful time. Good. It was a good time.
Question number 2, what is your proudest accomplishment in the media?
My proudest accomplishment are my 2 daughters.
Nice. Okay.
They are amazing women, and they are the best thing I've ever done. My proudest accomplishment in media, to be honest, is to be a Black woman who's 65 years old and still doing this, and still doing it in a way that I think is meaningful for communities.
Amazing. I love it.
I've done a lot in that time, and I'm proud to still be doing it.
That's great. Question 3. When you were a little girl, what was your childhood dream of a career?
I didn't know I wanted to be in media, and I have a brother who was actually a producer at MPT when I was coming through high school.
Maryland
So
Public Television.
Right, Maryland Public Television. I actually I didn't know about those behind the scenes jobs until then. But I think I wanted to be a producer. I think that's really, no, I take that back. What I really wanted to be was a radio DJ. And I tried that in college, and it was great.
Yes.
And I loved it. But it didn't work out for me. But I think that's what I really wanted to be.
So I was also a DJ in college, so that's fun. So that leads perfectly to question 4, which is, do you have a song or an anthem, a song that inspires you, lifts you up?
Oh man, I love almost the entire Earth, Wind and Fire songbook. I think their music is inspirational. If you really are listening, and it's the music of my time.
Yes.
And it makes me smile and dance and feel light and able to accomplish anything. So I would list them as the artist.
Perfect. I love that. And the last question, Nannette Hobson, CEO of Montgomery Community Media. What is your superpower? What is a skill or talent you have, something most folks can't do?
Something most folks can't do. Most folks can't do. I think I have the ability to get a group of people to focus on achieving a singular goal. Bringing all of their strengths and weaknesses together to form this one bond that will elevate everyone toward that single goal. I think that's my superpower.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, you are in the right job then. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure kibitzing with you today. Thank you for making the time. Yeah. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.